The morning sun peeked through the blinds of Blue Plate Diner as Mia wiped down the countertops. She had been on her feet since 5 that morning, and her back ached from leaning over tables. Still, she kept a small smile on her face. This job wasn't forever, just until she finished her nursing classes. "Order up," called Ray from the kitchen, sliding 2 plates of steaming eggs and bacon onto the counter. Mia tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and grabbed the plates. The diner was nearly empty now as the morning rush ended. Just a couple of truck drivers finishing their coffee, and a businessman typing furiously on his laptop. Mia delivered the food and refilled coffee cups, mentally calculating how much of today's tips would go toward her mom's medicine. The treatments were getting more expensive and the insurance covered less each month. Sometimes it felt like she was emptying buckets from a sinking boat. The bell above the door jingled. An old man stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his worn coat. He looked around, blinking as if the fluorescent lights were too bright. "Sit anywhere you like," Mia called, gesturing to the nearly empty diner. The old man nodded and shuffled toward the counter. He moved slowly, each step careful and measured. His clothes were clean but faded, a button-up shirt that hung loosely on his thin frame and pants that had been mended at the knee. "Coffee, please," he said in a voice that crackled like autumn leaves. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the menu. "Coming right up," Mia said, pouring him a cup. She noticed him squinting at the menu, holding it far from his face, then close, as if he couldn't quite focus. "Our specials today are blueberry pancakes and the farmer's breakfast," she offered, trying to be helpful without making him feel old. He nodded gratefully. "The pancakes sound nice." As Mia turned to put in his order, she heard a small clatter. The old man had knocked over his water glass and was now frantically trying to mop it up with his paper napkin. "Don't worry about that," Mia said quickly, grabbing a towel. "Happens all the time." The businessman at the end of the counter sighed loudly, checking his watch. Mia ignored him. While waiting for the pancakes, she chatted with the old man. His name was Harold, and he'd once been an engineer. She liked the way his eyes lit up when he talked about building things, though sometimes he'd pause in the middle of a sentence as if losing his train of thought. When the food arrived, Mia noticed Harold struggling to cut his pancakes. His knife kept slipping on the plate and frustration flashed across his face. The businessman was watching now, not even trying to hide his impatience. "Mind if I help?" Mia asked quietly, standing so her body blocked the view from the counter. "These pancakes can be stubborn sometimes." Relief washed over Harold's face. He nodded, and Mia quickly cut the pancakes into bite-sized pieces. She did it casually, as if she were just making sure the butter melted properly. "Thank you," Harold whispered. "My hands don't work like they used to." "My mom says the same thing," Mia replied with a warm smile. "But her mind's sharp as ever, just like yours." Harold smiled back, a real smile that reached his eyes. When he finished eating, Harold reached for his wallet. Mia watched as he opened it, concern growing as he counted the same few bills over and over. His face fell, and he looked up at her, embarrassed. "I thought I had more," he said, his voice small. "I must have forgotten to go to the bank." Mia glanced around. The diner was empty now except for Tina, the other waitress who was refilling salt shakers. "Don't worry about it," Mia said, keeping her voice low. "It's on me today." Harold shook his head. "I can't let you do that, young lady." "You can pay me back next time," Mia insisted, even though her tips that day had been disappointing. Her nursing textbook payment was due, but it could wait another week. "You're very kind," Harold said, his eyes suddenly looking watery. "Not many people would do that for a stranger." "Well, we're not strangers now, are we?" Mia replied. "I'm Mia, and you're Harold, the engineer who loves blueberry pancakes." He chuckled at that. When he stood to leave, Mia noticed he seemed unsteady. "Do you need help getting home?" she asked. "I can call someone for you." Harold waved her off. "My apartment's just 2 blocks away. I'll be fine. Been walking these streets for 60 years. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card yellowed with age. On the back, he scribbled something. "My address in case you want to visit sometime." Mia took the card, touched by the gesture. Most people barely looked at her when she served them. "I might just do that," she said, tucking the card into her apron pocket. As Harold headed for the door, Mia called out, "Same time tomorrow for pancakes?" He turned back, beaming. "I'll bring extra money." Mia watched him walk out into the light rain, his steps slow but determined. She cleared his dishes, finding a $5 bill tucked under the water glass. Every cent he had, she guessed. She slipped it into her pocket, planning to give it back to him tomorrow. The rest of her shift dragged by. When she finally hung up her apron, Mia's feet were throbbing. The bus was late and rain soaked through her thin jacket. By the time she reached her small apartment, all she wanted was a hot shower and sleep before her evening nursing classes. But her mom was having a bad day. The pain medication wasn't working well, and Mia spent an hour making soup and adjusting pillows before her mom finally dozed off. As Mia prepared for her class, she found Harold's card in her pocket. The address was in the old part of town, once fancy, now faded. She wondered how long he'd lived there and if he had family checking on him. That night, as her nursing instructor discussed elder care, Mia found herself paying extra attention. She thought of Harold's trembling hands and how he'd struggled with the menu. Early signs of something more serious, perhaps. She decided to look for him the next day, maybe bring him some soup if he didn't show up at the diner. It wasn't much, but it was something. In a world that moved too fast, where people walked by each other without really seeing, Mia believed small kindnesses mattered. What she didn't know was that her simple act of compassion had been witnessed by someone who would change her life forever. And the very next day, a black car would pull up outside her apartment building carrying a man whose name appeared on magazine covers and business programs. Harold's son, who had been searching for his father for weeks. Mia went to sleep that night tired but content, unaware that tomorrow would bring a knock on her door that would change everything. The next morning arrived with persistent rain tapping against Mia's bedroom window. She rolled over, burying her face in the pillow. Her alarm wouldn't go off for another 20 minutes, but someone was knocking at her door. She groaned and pulled the blanket over her head. The knocking continued. "Coming," she called, her voice thick with sleep. Probably Mrs. Chen from next door, locked out again. Mia stumbled to the door in her faded sleep shirt and plaid pajama pants, her hair a tangled mess. She rubbed her eyes and opened the door without checking the peephole. She blinked, wondering if she was still dreaming. A tall man in an expensive suit stood before her, raindrops glistening on his shoulders. Behind him, a black car with tinted windows idled by the curb, so out of place in her run-down apartment complex that neighbors were already peeking through their blinds. "Can I help you?" Mia asked, suddenly aware of her worn pajamas and the hole in the left toe of her sock. The man studied her face. He had sharp features and tired eyes like someone who hadn't slept well in days. Despite the early hour, his dark hair was perfectly styled, and his watch probably cost more than her rent for a year. "Are you Mia Lopez?" he asked. His voice was deep and measured, the kind that commanded boardrooms. "Yes," she answered cautiously. "Who's asking?" "My name is Thomas Wilson." He paused, as if expecting her to recognize the name. When she didn't react, he continued. "You helped my father yesterday, at Blue Plate Diner." Mia's brain finally caught up. "Harold, is he okay?" She looked past Thomas, half expecting to see the old man. "May I come in?" Thomas asked. "It's rather important." Mia hesitated. Her tiny apartment was a mess. Nursing textbooks piled on the coffee table, her mother's medication spread across the kitchen counter, last night's teacup unwashed in the sink. Sure," she finally said, stepping aside. "Sorry about the mess. I wasn't expecting company." Thomas stepped inside, looking around with an unreadable expression. Not judgment exactly, but like he was cataloging every detail. His gaze lingered on the family photo on the wall. Mia, her mother, and her late father at the beach years ago. Mia gestured vaguely to her bedroom. "Give me 2 minutes to change." She threw on jeans and a clean sweater, ran, a brush through her hair, and splashed water on her face. Her heart was racing. Why was Harold's son at her door? And why did he look like he'd stepped out of a business magazine? When she returned, Thomas was examining her nursing textbooks. "You're studying nursing?" he asked. "Part-time," Mia explained. "I work mornings at the diner, classes in the evening. It's taking forever, but—" She shrugged. "Is Harold okay?" Thomas set the book down carefully. "My father has early-stage dementia. He's been living alone against my wishes. Yesterday, he gave his caretaker the slip during their morning walk. We've been looking for him for hours when he finally called me from a payphone near the diner. He couldn't remember his address, but he remembered you." Mia sat down heavily on the couch. Poor Harold. The way he'd struggled with the menu, how he kept losing his train of thought. It made sense now. "He talked about how kind you were," Thomas continued, his professional demeanor softening slightly. "He said you helped him without making him feel helpless. That's rare. Is he home now? Safe?" Mia asked. Thomas nodded. "Yes. But he's refusing to move in with me or to accept full-time care. He's always been stubborn." Mia smiled despite herself. "I got that impression." A sudden coughing fit from the bedroom made them both turn. Mia jumped up. "Excuse me a moment." She hurried to her mother's room where the older woman was struggling to sit up. "Who's here, mija?" her mother whispered hoarsely. "Just someone from work," Mia said, helping her take a sip of water. "Go back to sleep, I'll make breakfast soon." When she returned, Thomas was standing by the window watching the rain. He turned to her with an intensity that made her nervous. "My father wants to see you again," he said. "He's been asking for the kind waitress all morning." "I work until 2 today," Mia said. "I could stop by after—" "I'd like to hire you," Thomas interrupted. Mia blinked. "I'm sorry?" "As my father's companion," he clarified. "Part caregiver, part friend. He responds to you in a way he hasn't responded to anyone since my mother died." Mia shook her head in confusion. "But I'm not qualified. I'm still in school, and you're studying nursing. You're more qualified than you think," Thomas said. He named a monthly salary figure that made Mia's mouth drop open. It was more than she made in 3 months at the diner. "This is crazy," she whispered. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Thomas replied. "I had you thoroughly checked out last night. No criminal record. Good academic standing. References from your previous jobs all positive. The diner manager called you the most reliable person on staff." Mia's cheeks burned. He'd investigated her. "That's kind of creepy," she said honestly. Thomas actually cracked a small smile at that. "I suppose it is. But when it comes to my father's care, I don't take chances." The smile vanished as quickly as it had appeared. He doesn't have much time left where he'll still be himself. I want those years to be good ones. For the first time, Mia noticed the dark circles under Thomas's eyes, the slight droop of his shoulders beneath the perfect suit. He looked like a man carrying a heavy weight. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "This is happening very fast." Thomas reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "My card is inside, along with details of the position. The driver will take you to meet my father this afternoon after your shift if you're willing. No commitment yet, just a conversation." A fit of coughing from the bedroom made them both turn again. Thomas's eyes narrowed slightly. "Your mother is ill," he stated. It wasn't a question. Mia nodded. "Cancer. The treatments are expensive." Understanding dawned on Thomas's face. "The health insurance through this position is comprehensive, for dependents as well." Mia felt a flicker of hope she didn't want to acknowledge. This was too good to be true. Rich businessman shows up offering the exact solution to her problems? Life didn't work that way. "Why me?" she asked bluntly. "You could hire a professional nurse with years of experience." Thomas walked to the door, then turned back. "I've hired professionals. The best money can buy. My father hated all of them. But you—" He paused. "He said you treated him like a person, not a problem to solve." After Thomas left, Mia sat on her couch, turning the envelope over in her hands. Through the thin walls, she could hear her mother's labored breathing. The salary Thomas offered would cover the experimental treatment her mother's doctor had mentioned, the one insurance wouldn't touch. It would let her focus on finishing school without working herself to exhaustion, but moving into a stranger's world, leaving everything familiar behind. Mia opened the envelope and gasped. Inside was a check. An advance, the note said, large enough to cover 2 months of her mother's treatments. Her hands trembled as she held it. This wasn't just a job offer. It was a lifeline. Outside, the black car still waited. Mia smoothed her only good blouse as she stood in the lobby of Wilson Tower. Everything around her gleamed. The marble floors, the brass fixtures, the glass elevator that shot up into the clouds. People in sharp suits hurried past, their shoes clicking importantly on the polished floor. She felt out of place, clutching her small purse like a lifeline. After her diner shift, she'd rushed home to change, telling her boss she might not be back tomorrow. Ray had just nodded knowingly. Waitresses came and went. "Ms. Lopez?" A woman approached, tablet in hand. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, not a strand out of place. "Mr. Wilson is expecting you. Follow me, please." The elevator ride was silent and swift, Mia's stomach dropping as they soared past floor after floor. The woman, who hadn't bothered to introduce herself, tapped away at her tablet, barely acknowledging Mia's presence. Finally, they reached the top floor. "Mr. Wilson's office," the woman announced, gesturing to a set of heavy wooden doors. "He's on a call. You can wait here." She pointed to a sleek leather couch. "Actually," Mia said, finding her voice, "I'm here to see Harold Wilson. His son arranged it." The woman froze, her perfectly shaped eyebrows lifting in surprise. "You're here for the senior Mr. Wilson?" Her tone suggested this was unusual. "Yes," Mia replied, straightening her shoulders slightly. "Thomas, Mr. Wilson invited me." A flicker of something, respect maybe, crossed the woman's face. "I see. In that case, we'll take the private elevator to the residence." Another elevator, another stomach-dropping ascent. This one opened directly into a penthouse apartment with windows that seemed to embrace the entire city. The view stole Mia's breath away. Mountains in the distance, the river winding through downtown, tiny cars moving like toys far below. "This way," the woman said, leading Mia through a living room bigger than her entire apartment. Modern art hung on the walls, and furniture that probably cost more than her yearly salary was arranged in perfect groupings. They reached a sunroom where Harold sat in a comfortable chair, a book open on his lap. He looked different today, freshly shaved, hair combed, wearing a cardigan that brought out the blue in his eyes. But his expression was clouded, distant. "Mr. Wilson, your guest has arrived," the woman announced. Harold looked up, confusion evident on his face. Then he saw Mia, and his expression transformed. "The pancake angel," he exclaimed, his whole face lighting up. "You came." Mia couldn't help but smile. "I promised I would," she said, stepping forward as the assistant quietly disappeared. "Sit, sit," Harold urged, gesturing to the chair beside him. "This place needs a friendly face. Too many strangers coming and going, fussing over me like I'm a child." Mia sat down, taking in the sunny room with its expensive plants and view of a private rooftop garden. "Your home is beautiful," she said. "It's Tommy's place," Harold corrected. "I have a little house across town. Been there 40 years, but Tommy thinks I need watching." He tapped his temple with a finger. "Because of this old brain playing tricks." "How are you feeling today?" Mia asked gently. "Some days are clear as crystal," Harold replied. "Others, it's like trying to see through fog. Today's not so bad." He leaned forward. "Did Tommy offer you a job, to look after me?" Mia nodded. "He did. It was quite a surprise." Harold chuckled. "He moves fast, that boy. Always has. Once he decides something, it's as good as done." His eyes, clear and sharp today, studied her face. But you haven't decided yet. I haven't, Mia admitted. It's a big change. Because of your mother, Harold said. It wasn't a question. Mia's eyes widened. How did you know? Tommy mentioned it. Said she's sick. Cancer? Mia nodded, unsure what else to say. I lost my Ellie to cancer, Harold said softly. 20 years ago now. Tommy was just starting college. A shadow passed over his face. Changed. Everything between us. He wanted to drop out, take care of me. I wouldn't let him. He shook his head. Stubborn, both of us. The door opened and Thomas entered, looking even more imposing in his own territory. He'd changed from the morning suit to another, equally expensive one. I see you've met. Again, he said, his tone neutral but his eyes watchful as they moved between Mia and his father. Tommy, Harold brightened. Come sit with us. The pancake angel is here. Thomas's lips twitched almost a smile. I see that, Dad. He turned to Mia. Thank you for coming. The driver didn't give me much choice, Mia said with a small laugh. Very persistent. Dad, would you excuse us for a few minutes? Thomas asked. I'd like to speak with Mia about the position. Harold waved them away. Go. Talk about me behind my back. His eyes twinkled to show he was joking. But bring her back, Tommy. I like this one. Thomas led Mia to a home office that was somehow both intimidating and comfortable. Books lined one wall and family photos. Harold in younger days with a beautiful woman and a young boy who must be Thomas, lined another. Would you like something to drink? Thomas asked, gesturing to a small bar in the corner. Just water. Thanks, Mia replied, still feeling out of her depth. Thomas poured 2 waters and sat across from her. Up close, in the sunlight streaming through the windows, he looked more human than he had in her apartment. Tired lines framed his eyes, and his posture, while still straight, had softened slightly. My father likes you, he said directly. That's rare these days. He's a sweet man, Mia replied. He wasn't always, Thomas said, a hint of old pain in his voice. But that's not relevant now. He set his glass down. Let me be clear about what I'm offering, Ms. Lopez. Mia, she corrected automatically. Mia, he acknowledged. The position is part companion, part health coordinator. You would live in the guest suite here during the week, free to return home on weekends if you wish. Your primary responsibility would be keeping my father engaged, accompanying him to appointments, ensuring he takes his medications, and alerting his medical team to any changes in his condition. Thomas continued. You'd have access to a car and driver. Your nursing studies would be fully funded, and you could arrange your class schedule as needed. Your mother would receive the best medical care available, covered by our family's insurance. It sounded too perfect. Mia's skepticism must have shown on her face. You're wondering why I'm offering so much, Thomas said shrewdly. Mia nodded. It seemed excessive for what you're asking. Thomas stood and walked to the window, his back to her. My father built Wilson Technologies from nothing, created things that changed the world. Then my mother got sick and he vanished into grief. By the time I realized how bad it was getting, his memory, his confusion, years had passed. He turned to face her. I need someone he trusts, someone who sees him as a person, not a burden or a project or a former CEO. And that's me? After one breakfast, Mia asked incredulously. Sometimes that's all it takes, Thomas replied. One moment of genuine kindness when it's needed most. He returned to his seat. Will you at least try? A 1-month trial. If it doesn't work out, I'll provide a generous severance and excellent references. Mia thought of her mother, of the experimental treatment that might help her, of her nursing degree that seemed so far away when working double shifts. I'd need to check on my mother regularly, she said finally. Make sure her new treatments are working. Of course, Thomas replied, and Mia realized he was holding his breath, waiting for her answer. Okay, she said, the word feeling momentous as it left her lips. 1 month to see if it works for everyone. Thomas exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly. Good. You can start Monday if that works for you. As they walked back to the sunroom, Mia felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. She was stepping into an entirely different world, with different rules and expectations. Harold looked up as they entered, his eyes finding Mia's immediately. Well? He asked hopefully. I'll be coming to visit you regularly, Mia told him, smiling. If that's okay with you? Harold clapped his hands together once like a child. More than okay. We'll have pancakes every morning. Thomas, standing behind her, made a small sound that might have been a laugh. For the first time, Mia wondered if she might be helping both Wilson men, not just one. 3 weeks into her new job, Mia sat cross-legged on the floor of Harold's study, surrounded by old photo albums and dusty boxes. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, catching dust motes as they danced in the air. What about this one? She asked, holding up a faded photograph of a much younger Harold standing next to a strange-looking machine. What were you working on here? Harold squinted at the photo, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. Today was one of his good days, his eyes clear, his memory sharp. Ah, he exclaimed, taking the photo with careful hands. That was the prototype for our first medical imaging device. 1978, I think. The big companies said it couldn't be done for that price point. He chuckled. Proved them wrong, didn't we? Mia smiled, adding the photo to the keep pile. They'd been at this for days now, sorting through Harold's belongings that Thomas had moved from his old house to the penthouse. What had started as a simple organizing task had turned into a journey through Harold's remarkable life. Your son mentioned you have some old notebooks, Mia said, pulling another box forward. Engineering notes or something? Harold's face lit up. My idea books, Tommy kept those? I thought they were long gone. He leaned forward eagerly as Mia opened the box. Inside were dozens of leather-bound notebooks, their pages yellowed with age. Harold reached for one with trembling hands, opening it reverently. Inside were detailed drawings, equations, and notes in neat handwriting. These are amazing, Mia said, flipping through another notebook. Though she didn't understand the technical details, she could appreciate the care and brilliance evident in every page. Ideas come to me sometimes, Harold explained, tapping his temple. Always have, even now when this old brain gets foggy. His smile faded slightly. Not that it matters. Now, Tommy runs the company his way. No room for an old man's crazy ideas. Mia glanced at him, hearing the hint of hurt in his voice. Over the past weeks, she'd pieced together bits of the Wilson family story. How Harold had founded the company but stepped away after his wife died. How Thomas had transformed it from a medical device manufacturer into a technology giant. How father and son had drifted apart in their grief, each unable to reach the other. Have you shown these to Thomas recently? She asked carefully. Harold shook his head. He's busy. Important meetings, business trips. He waved a hand dismissively, but Mia caught the longing in his eyes. Besides, technology's passed me by. What do I know about smartphones and cloud computing? Before Mia could respond, the door opened and Thomas appeared. As usual, he looked impeccable in his tailored suit, but Mia had learned to see beyond the polished exterior. The slight tightness around his eyes told her he was tired. Dad, he said, sounding surprised. You're up early. Mia's helping me sort through my things, Harold replied, his voice shifting to a slightly more formal tone. Mia had noticed this change whenever Thomas entered a room, as if father and son had forgotten how to be comfortable with each other. Thomas's eyes swept over the mess of boxes and papers. I see that. He stepped into the room, picking up one of the notebooks. I haven't seen these in years. Your father was just showing me his work, Mia said, standing up to stretch her legs. It's fascinating. Thomas flipped through the notebook, a strange expression crossing his face. Dad was always coming up with ideas ahead of their time. There was genuine admiration in his voice. Some of our best-selling products started in these notebooks. Harold looked up in surprise. You used my old designs? Of course, Thomas replied, as if it were obvious. The cardiac monitoring system? That was based on your sketches from the 90s. We just updated the technology. Harold stared at his son. You never told me. An uncomfortable silence fell. Mia glanced between them, seeing the unspoken words, the years of misunderstanding. I thought you knew, Thomas finally said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. Mia cleared her throat. I should check on lunch, she said, sensing they needed a moment alone. As she slipped out, she heard Harold ask Thomas about another design, their voices gradually warming. In the kitchen, Mia found Anna, Harold's favorite cook, preparing sandwiches. Those two talking? Anna asked knowingly, nodding toward the study. Finally, Mia replied, leaning against the counter. It's like they speak different languages sometimes. Anna, who had worked for the Wilsons for decades, chuckled. Always. Been that way. Even before Mrs. Wilson passed, the father sees art, the son sees business. She handed Mia a glass of water. But they both see genius in each other, whether they admit it or not. Later that evening, after Harold had gone to bed, Mia was surprised to find Thomas knocking on the door of her guest suite. In 3 weeks, he'd been unfailingly polite but distant, leaving Harold's care largely to her. Is everything okay? She asked, opening the door wider. Yes, Thomas said, then hesitated. May I come in for a moment? Mia nodded, gesturing to the small sitting area of her suite. Though small was relative, it was still bigger than her entire apartment. Thomas remained standing, hands in his pockets. I wanted to thank you, he said finally, for what you're doing with my father. It's my job, Mia replied simply. No. Thomas shook his head. Your job is to make sure he takes his medication and gets to his appointments. What you're doing, helping him reconnect with his past, his work, that's something else entirely. Mia shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. He's proud of his work. It makes him happy to talk about it. He showed me some of his recent notes today, Thomas said, a note of wonder in his voice. Ideas he's had just in the past few months. One of them. He trailed off, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, momentarily mussing it. One of them might solve a problem our R&D department has been stuck on for over a year. Mia smiled. He's still sharp on his good days. I had forgotten that, Thomas admitted. Or maybe I just didn't want to see it because then I'd have to face how much I've kept him at arm's length. He looked directly at Mia, his expression suddenly vulnerable. My mother's death. It broke something between us. I didn't know how to reach him through his grief, and then later, through his illness. It was the most personal thing he'd ever said to her. Mia chose her words carefully. Grief doesn't end, but it changes. And people need different things at different times. She thought of her own mother, how their relationship had shifted after her father died. Sometimes just being present is enough. Thomas nodded slowly. I've scheduled a meeting next week, Dad, me, and our head of R&D, to discuss his ideas. A small, genuine smile crossed his face. He was like a different person when I suggested it, like someone had switched on a light. That's wonderful, Mia said sincerely. Thomas moved toward the door, then paused. The 1-month trial period ends next week. His tone shifted back to business. Unless you have objections, I'd like to make the position permanent. I'd like that, Mia replied, surprised at how much she meant it. What had started as a job, a means to help her mother, had become something more. She genuinely cared about Harold, and she was beginning to see that Thomas, beneath his controlled exterior, cared deeply too. After Thomas left, Mia called her mother. The new treatments were working. Her latest scans showed improvement. As they talked, Mia found herself sharing stories about Harold and his inventions, about the slowly healing relationship between father and son. Sounds like you're doing more than just nursing there, her mother observed. You're helping heal a family. Mia hadn't thought of it that way, But as she looked around her new temporary home, at the life she had stumbled into because of one small kindness, she wondered if her mother was right. 6 months had passed since Mia first served Harold pancakes at the Blue Plate Diner. The seasons had changed, summer fading into fall, and now winter approached with promises of snow. Mia stood at the back of an auditorium, watching Harold walk onto a stage. He moved slowly but with purpose, his spine straight, his eyes bright. Thomas stood beside him, one hand gently on his father's elbow, not guiding, just supporting. The crowd of Wilson Technologies employees, investors, and media representatives applauded as Harold approached the microphone. Mia felt her chest tighten with pride. 3 months ago, he wouldn't have been able to do this, to face so many people, to remember his words. But the new medication, combined with regular cognitive exercises and Thomas's renewed presence in his life, had slowed the progression of his illness. "Thank you," Harold said, his voice stronger than Mia expected. "For an old man like me, this kind of welcome means a lot." Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. 50 years ago, I started this company with nothing but ideas and stubbornness," Harold continued. "Ideas about how technology could help doctors save lives. Today, my son is showing you something new, something that might save even more lives." He turned to Thomas, who stepped forward. "What we're unveiling today," Thomas said, "is a breakthrough cancer treatment device that targets cancer cells with unprecedented precision, minimizing damage to healthy tissue." Images appeared on the screen behind them, complex diagrams that Mia couldn't fully understand, but recognized from Harold's notebooks, the very ones they had discovered together that day among the boxes. "The core technology," Thomas continued, his voice steady but charged with emotion, "was conceptualized by my father decades ago, long before we had the supporting technology to make it work. His original designs, combined with our current capabilities, have created something revolutionary." More applause. Mia saw Harold blink rapidly, fighting tears. "But this isn't just about technology," Thomas added. "It's about people. The patients who will benefit, the families who will have more time together." He paused, glancing at his father. "And it's about seeing value in unexpected places, or people." Thomas turned slightly, looking directly at Mia at the back of the room. "We're also announcing today the creation of the Wilson Nursing Scholarship Foundation, which will provide full funding for aspiring nurses facing financial hardships." Mia froze, her mouth dropping open in surprise. They hadn't told her about this. "The first recipient," Thomas continued, "is someone who showed extraordinary compassion to a stranger, changing the course of our family and our company. Mia Lopez, would you please join us on stage?" For a moment, Mia couldn't move. The room blurred as tears filled her eyes. Someone gently pushed her forward, and somehow her feet carried her up the steps and across the stage. Harold beamed at her, opening his arms for a hug that she gladly stepped into. "You did this, Pancake Angel," he whispered in her ear. Thomas shook her hand formally, but his eyes were warm. "This scholarship will cover not just your education, but will be established permanently in your name. Every year, 10 nurses will receive full funding for their education." The rest of the event passed in a blur. Afterwards, at a small reception, Mia finally had a chance to speak privately with Thomas. "You didn't have to do this," she said, still overwhelmed. "Actually, I did," he replied. "Do you know what the doctors are saying about my father's condition?" Mia nodded. She coordinated all of Harold's care. "That it's stabilized, that he's doing better than they expected. They say it's because he has purpose again," Thomas said quietly. "Because he feels valued and needed. You gave him that before." I realized what was missing. He looked across the room to where Harold was charming a group of investors, looking more like his old self than he had in years. "You reminded me that he's still my father, still brilliant, still here." Mia followed, his gaze. "He loves working with you on this project, and he couldn't have done it without you finding those notebooks," Thomas pointed out, "without you encouraging him to share his ideas with me." A waiter approached with a message. Mia's mother had arrived. Thomas had insisted on flying her in for the event. arranging for her medical care during the trip. Mia found her mother in a quiet corner of the reception, looking better than she had in months. The experimental treatment, now fully covered by the Wilsons' insurance, was working. "I'm so proud of you, Mia," her mother said, squeezing her hand. "Look what you've accomplished." "I just served an old man breakfast." Mia laughed softly. "No." Her mother shook her head firmly. "You saw a person who needed kindness, and you gave it freely. That's who you've always been." Later that evening, Harold insisted on taking everyone to the Blue Plate Diner for dinner. Ray, the cook, nearly fainted when a fleet of luxury cars pulled up, and Harold Wilson himself walked in, requesting the best booth in the house. They crowded around a vinyl booth. Harold, Thomas, Mia, her mother, and Dr. Chen, the lead scientist, who had helped develop Harold's design into a working prototype. The regular customers stared as they ordered breakfast for dinner, Harold insisting that the pancakes were world-class. "To think," Harold said, cutting into his stack of blueberry pancakes, "all of this started right here, at this little diner. All because Mia was kind to a stranger," Thomas added, raising his coffee cup in a small toast to her. Mia blushed but smiled. In the 6 months since that rainy morning, everything had changed. She was now the official health coordinator for Harold, still living in the guest suite during the week but taking classes full-time thanks to the Wilsons' support. Her mother was responding well to treatment. And just last week, the first human trials of the new cancer treatment device had been approved, a device that would help countless patients like her mother. "You know what my favorite part is?" Harold said, looking around the table. "Seeing my son every day, working together like the old days." Thomas's expression softened in a way that still surprised Mia. The ruthless businessman had a heart after all. He just needed help remembering it. "And your ideas are still the best in the business, Dad," Thomas replied sincerely. As they ate and talked, Mia glanced around the diner where it all began. At the next table, a young woman was helping. An elderly customer read the menu, speaking gently and with respect. Life moved in circles, Mia thought. Kindness led to unexpected places, and sometimes the smallest actions created the biggest changes. The diner door jingled as new customers entered, shaking rain from their umbrellas. Outside, the city lights glowed through the mist, and inside, in a small booth in a modest diner, two families that fate had brought together continued to heal, to grow, to build something new. "More coffee?" Mia asked, reaching for the pot in a gesture that felt both familiar and new. Harold covered her hand with his own weathered one. "You're not the waitress anymore, remember?" he said with a wink. "Old habits," Mia laughed. But as she looked around at these people who had become so important to her, she realized that some parts of her would always be that waitress, the one who believed that small kindnesses mattered, that people were worth the effort, that sometimes all it took to change a life was noticing when someone needed help, and sometimes that was enough to change everything.